The Last House on Cedar Street. Chapter 1. The Return Home. "20 years had passed since I left Oakwood, yet the memory of its quiet streets and quaint charm remained etched in my mind like a faded photograph. Returning after a decade away, I expected to find solace in familiar places, but the town seemed different now. Smaller, more isolated. My childhood home felt like a stranger's abode as I settled into the musty attic bedroom with its creaking floorboards and worn carpet. Oakwood had grown too quiet, and so had everyone in it. Friends who once shared laughter and secrets were now distant acquaintances, their lives moving on without me. The first few days were spent catching up on lost time, revisiting old haunts, but my efforts were met with lukewarm smiles and hasty goodbyes. The town's pulse seemed to have slowed down since I left, and its people had changed too. I was the one who remained stuck in time, unable to bridge the gap between past and present. One evening, as I explored the house, an unsettling chill crept up my spine when a strange noise startled me. A low, whistling melody that sounded like it came from outside. Stepping onto the porch, I gazed down Cedar Street. The last house at the end of the street stood dark and still, its windows gaping hollow eyes, a stark contrast to the lively streets around it. Shadows played tricks with my imagination as I scanned the empty yard. Perhaps it was fatigue or the lingering ghosts of childhood memories that made me jump when another eerie whisper floated through the air. The night grew darker, the wind carrying an otherworldly scent. Not of rain, but something else, like decaying leaves and forgotten dreams. I tried to shake off a nagging sense of unease as I entered my childhood home, locking the door behind me with an unsettling rattle. In the silence, every floorboard groaned underfoot, echoing through the night. My mother had always warned about that house, how it should be avoided, its occupants cursed, but stories often dwelled in folklore and superstition. Yet here I was alone on Cedar Street once more. Sleep eluded me as strange sounds infiltrated my dreams. Whispers, footsteps outside my window, a scratching at the walls. Each morning brought another day of disconnection. People disappearing into their routines without a second glance. My best friend, Sarah, now a mother with children, barely had time for me beyond obligatory hugs and conversations about weather. Even Grandpa Joe's stories from his army days lost their luster as he recounted them in hushed tones, eyes darting towards the windows, as if watching something beyond the glass. I began to feel like a ghost myself, invisible yet present. One night, the creaks intensified into an ominous symphony, each one drawing me closer to Cedar Street. Moonlight painted eerie patterns across my bedroom floor, shadows that danced like restless spirits. A morning light revealed a single message on my doorstep. "Welcome home. No signature." I recognized Mark's handwriting from high school, but life had taken him down a different path while mine was marooned in time. The invitation to coffee hung heavy in my hand as I stood at the door of our favorite diner. Mark greeted me with an easy smile and a cup of steaming coffee, his eyes tinged with concern. "I know why you're back," he said, leaning in close enough for me to catch the scent of old books and stale air. "You can't stay away from Oakwood forever." I hesitated over a response as the diner emptied out. Patrons seemed to shrink away into their booths or huddle closer together. Mark's gaze drifted towards Cedar Street. "That house, Emma. It calls you back, doesn't it?" His eyes bore an intensity that echoed my own curiosity. Over breakfast, he spoke of his late-night watchful observations. A flicker of light in the windows during full moons and whispers on the wind. He recounted tales of children seeing shadowy figures at night, and an old lady's rumors of dark rituals performed under the light of the summer solstice moon. I listened intently as if it was my own memories returning, but they were only stories. Or so I told myself. Mark spoke with conviction, drawing me deeper into his observations. He spoke of strange artifacts littering the yard and the eerie glow emanating from within its walls during those nights. Every word felt like an awakening to a reality I tried to escape. As we parted ways, he handed me a book, The Oakwood Legacy, a local history with cryptic notes scribbled in the margins. Cedar Street beckoned. Chapter 2. The First Encounter. Cedar Street, once a place of laughter and summer days, had transformed into a threshold to unease under moonlight. I ventured towards it, book clutched tightly, Mark's warnings resonating within me. The house loomed ahead, its facade battered by time, the windows like hollow eyes that bore witness to secrets. Dust swirled in my wake as I approached, as if nature itself was trying to deter me. Mark stood beneath a sycamore tree outside, watching with a knowing intensity. "Don't be drawn to it," he cautioned, but the allure of unknown truths won out. Chapter 3. The Last House. On the summer solstice eve, Mark led me up steep stairs to a hidden room where artifacts lined the walls. Amulets and talismans from the 1950s. To keep at bay, he said, eyes alight with an understanding that bordered on fear. An heirloom locket in my pocket felt heavy, its chain broken. Lily's tale was inscribed upon it. A child of the woods, born under a full moon and lost within these walls. A chill ran down my spine as an unsettling connection took hold. Mark claimed we had to leave come dawn. This house wanted something from me. "You feel it?" he asked, voice hushed in awe. I nodded, as if acknowledging what lurked in the shadows. A force that spoke through artifacts and whispers. At sunrise, an old lady appeared on our doorstep. Mrs. Crawford, an elderly woman with eyes of Lily's smile, revealed herself. She knew my name. It was enough to unravel decades' worth of mystery. A legacy passed down through generations awakened that night, she claimed. The wind outside grew in intensity, and shadows stretched like living things. Mark watched from the street below as I entered her house. "The forest has called you home," she said, offering a lock of silver hair tied with twine. Lily's once my own pigtails. She spoke of an heirloom locket born on that night, and how it was meant to keep at bay what lurked within the woods during solstices. The Crawfords' legacy of madness. I had no answer when she spoke of me as a child, wandering with eyes older than my youth. A connection pulsed between us, an understanding rooted in unspoken truths. We returned under moonlight as promised. The wind had changed its song. It was now the wail of the lost children. I found myself on the stairs, the lock and chain gone from my pocket. Mark's hand tightened around mine. Together we ascended to a hidden room filled with artifacts. Lily's eyes were mine that night in her portrait, an unsettling realization. In our hands lay old tales made real, charms against madness, amulets of protection forged by ancestors who'd lost their way under moonlight, talismans born from the heartache of their children never returning home. As we descended, the siren's song swelled to a crescendo. Shadows elongated into specters on the walls, and I felt it. An unseen force urging me towards the forest. my hair whipping in an unnatural gust. Mark grasped my hand tightly as I ventured out under the full moon's gaze. The woods embraced us, branches reaching for the sky. In their embrace, Lily's spirit took on human form, a child with eyes that held a knowing far beyond her years. She spoke of being buried alive in darkness while awake and conscious, as if under an otherworldly spell. My hands were no longer mine alone. The artifacts thrummed in our grip like ancient instruments. I felt it awaken something within me. Power or madness, it was unclear. In that moment, all I wanted to do was leave, but I had become a part of Oakwood's legacy without realizing it. Lily's eyes became mine under an unseen moonlight, then faded as quickly as they appeared. The forest whispered, "You are one with them now." Mark waited below, ashen-faced and distant when he met my gaze. In his eyes, fear battled curiosity. With each passing night, the woods called louder, promising answers if I could hear their voices. Sarah's car headlights illuminated us. She'd heard rumors but never believed them. Tales of an inquisitive soul returning with an heirloom locket, a family's madness passed down through generations. The wind carried an ethereal voice. "You were born to this," it said. On that night, the locket was my heart's soul decoration. I'd found home. Now, I had no choice but to embrace what lay within. Mrs. Crawford handed me a letter, a confession of darkness and the weight of being buried alive under moonlight. We left in the car, but an unseen force drove us back towards those woods. In them, we became one with the forest, our hands entwined, faces pressed against each other's. And as we stood there, I knew it was more than just curiosity driving me. My soul had found home under an alien light. I'd returned to Oakwood for a reason beyond the artifacts, because of what this place held within me, a legacy.